Hello, daughters of the American Revolution. My name is Tim Wynn, and I'm a professional parliamentarian. This means that I travel around the country helping organizations of all different sizes and types to have better meetings. So, what I want to do today is I want to give you some information about what to expect from a parliamentary standpoint in a large convention. So I know you have a big event ahead of you, and what I want to do is take away some of the mystery, and I want to take away some of the fear that might be associated with participating in such a large convention as this. So I've made a list of notes that I want to cover that I want to make sure that I impart to you. So first off, I want to talk about parliamentary law. What is it and how does it help us? Well, parliamentary law is concerned with the smooth and orderly transaction of business in a meeting. So that's the whole purpose. And so to that end, parliamentary law is concerned with preserving the rules and it's concerned with protecting the rights of members. And that's very important right there when we talk about the rights of members. So when you go into a convention to, let's say, make a motion or speak in debate, you're not asking someone's permission to speak in debate. You're not asking someone's permission to be there. This is not a gift that's being handed down to you. This is your right. As a member, you have a right. You are a member of the convention. That means the convention is there for you and your other delegates as well. But the convention is there for you to exercise your rights. That's the whole purpose of it. If we remove your rights from it, there's no purpose to even have the convention. So keep that in mind. All of this was organized for you to be able to exercise your rights in a free and fair way. So that's where parliamentary law comes in. All of the rules that are designed in parliamentary law have this premise at their base. They're all about protecting members' rights and then facilitating the smooth and orderly transaction of business. So rules aren't in place just arbitrarily, just to have a rule there. They're all designed strategically so that you feel comfortable in the meeting and so that you're able to freely exercise your rights. If you're feeling anything different than that, it means that there's a lack of understanding or application of the proper rules. So we're going to look at some of those as we go through. First, I want to talk about what those rights are. You have the right to make motions as a member, in this case, a delegate in the convention. You have a right to speak in debate. Someone's not allowing you to speak in debate. It is your right to speak in debate when it's your turn. Now, there are guidelines, of course, for this debate to be free and fair for all members, and the rights of all members have to be balanced out in the rules, and they are. But keep in mind that you also, as a member, have the right to vote. And this is very important, more than it even seems on face value. We all know the power of a vote and how important that is. But when we come across any decision inside that assembly, any decision, how will we determine what the will of the assembly is? Well, we will do that through a vote. So it's more important than it seems, when you first look at it. Keep in mind that whenever there's a disagreement inside that assembly, what we need is a vote, and that vote is usually is preceded by free and fair debate, so that now members are able to have a better understanding of the issue before them and able to make a more educated vote. Okay, so another important thing to keep in mind, like I said before, this entire convention has been assembled for the benefit of the delegates so that they can speak in debate, make motions, and so that they can come to a decision through their vote. So the important aspect here to always keep in mind is that the assembly, and when I say assembly, that means the delegates inside the meeting, the assembly is in charge of its meeting. That means any decision that has to be made, the assembly ultimately has the ability to make that decision because they are the final authority. Now, another important thing to keep in mind is the goal of parliamentary law. The whole goal is that at the end of the day, the will of the assembly prevails. So if we go into a meeting and let's say 80% of the members inside that meeting are in favor of a particular motion or resolution, then if that motion or resolution is not adopted, if it's lost somehow, then that's a crime against the principles of parliamentary law. On the other hand, if 80% are against a particular motion or resolution and somehow it's adopted, then that too is a similar crime against the principles of parliamentary law, because our true goal is to get to the will of the assembly and make sure that that prevails. All that we can do as members is we can speak in debate to try to convince our fellow delegates to vote the way that we want to vote, or we can listen to their arguments and perhaps change our minds, or we can meet somewhere in the middle by adopting amendments that would make whatever the motion or resolution is more palatable to both sides. So we have plenty of options, but at the end of the day, keep in mind, the assembly's will should prevail. So in parliamentary law, there are no tricks, special tricks and traps that you can come up with to thwart the will of the assembly. That is not proper in parliamentary law. So it's not a situation where you have two sides and whoever hires the better parliamentarian wins the day. No. Parliamentarians are not like attorneys where they just represent one side and do everything for that side. Parliamentarians are a different breed. Parliamentarians should always be in agreement on the rules because parliamentarians simply give you insight into what the rules are and into what parliamentary law is in a particular existing situation. So this gives you your ability to exercise your rights, and also it gives options for the assembly to be able to better express its will inside that meeting. So what we want to make sure that all of you are clear on is that it is your meeting. It is your meeting to the extent that you have rights inside that meeting. It is your meeting in the sense that you have a vote in each issue that comes before the meeting. And it is your meeting in the fact that you are part of that assembly and the assembly decides everything that's contained inside that meeting. So any question that pops up is ultimately the assembly's job to decide. However, we also need to talk about the presiding officer, also referred to as the chair in parliamentary law. So when someone is elected or appointed as the chair of a meeting, that individual gets additional duties and responsibilities, not additional authority. And if that individual is not a member of the assembly, then they have no authority. Oftentimes when I'm training on this subject, I'll ask a group of participants if the chair is the most powerful person in a deliberative assembly. Is the chair the most powerful person? And I always tell them, when you're thinking about this question, think also, if it's not the chair, then who would be the most powerful person in a deliberative assembly? Because we kind of start out, when we look at parliamentary law, we start out with this misconception that the chair is the head figure and the chair is this leader and this guider, sort of like the chair is the coach of the football team. So of course is the head of the team, but that's not the case at all. The chair is not the teacher in a classroom. The chair, I liken it to, the chair is more like the chauffeur or the driver of a bus. So when you hire someone to drive you somewhere, that person doesn't say, "Oh, you made me the driver so I can go wherever I want." No, that person has to go where they were directed to go. And in the same way, the chair has to go where the assembly directs the chair to go. So how does this work in parliamentary law? Well, it would just be too burdensome on the assembly if everything that came up had to be put to a vote of the assembly. Well, let's let the assembly decide. Okay, here's another question. So how does the assembly get around this cumbersome approach? Well, they give the chair the duty of making these decisions. So every decision in parliamentary law that comes up is first ruled on by the chair. So if a member says something in debate that's out of order, the chair doesn't ask for a vote of the assembly. Can you guys please help me out here and tell me? No, the chair has a duty to make a ruling. Is that in order or out of order? When a motion is made, is it in order or out of order? The chair must decide. When an amendment is made, is that in order? Is it properly pertain to the motion? Or does it bring up a completely separate question and it is out of order? Which of these is the case? The assembly doesn't vote on all of these things. The chair simply makes a ruling on them. So the chair would rule the motion is out of order and then state why the motion is out of order. Now, every single time the chair makes a ruling like this, it is subject to an appeal, an immediate appeal. As you'll learn, we've created some packets for you and some guiding material to help you exercise your rights through the meeting. So this is a big point, something we focus on a lot, is when you spot a violation of the rules, you can make a point of order, and you should right away, because most of the point of orders have to be timely. You have to make it immediately or you lose the right to make it. And with rulings, when you're appealing from a ruling, that appeal has to be immediate. In every case, you have to do it right then before you move on to other business. You can't say, hey, that thing you did 3 weeks ago, I want to appeal that. Or that thing you did 2 motions ago, I want to appeal that. No, it has to be timely. So make sure that you are ready with a timely appeal. You don't have to, there's really nothing to be ready about except be ready to say, I appeal from the decision of the chair. So if you disagree with one of the chair's rulings in one of these cases, remember the chair has that duty to initially make the ruling, but it's subject to that immediate appeal. So when the chair makes a ruling that you disagree with, simply say, I appeal from the decision of the chair. Now, like I said, we have drafted all this up in some documents that you can read, and it has references to Robert's Rules of Order, and you can learn about it. I'm not going to, in this video, go into depth with all of the rules, but I want to look more at the mindset behind the rules, how you apply them. So it should be very clear to you in your mind when you're in that meeting that you have the right, it is your right to appeal, and you don't have to take the time to be absolutely certain or track it down or find any of that. No, the chair says that, for example, with point of order, when you think that the rules are being violated, you can make a point of order. You don't have to take your time to make sure you're right about it, because then it'll be too late to make a point of order. But if you genuinely think they're being violated, you can make a point of order. Now, in the same way with an appeal, Robert's Rules of Order guides that if you disagree with the chair, you should not, with the chair's ruling, you should not hesitate to make an appeal. Now, notice that you should not hesitate. There shouldn't be any doubt in your mind. I don't agree with that ruling, so I'm going to appeal it. What happens then? If the matter at hand is taken out of the chair's hand and placed before the assembly, the ultimate power, remember the assembly, the will of the assembly should prevail. So it's placed before the assembly for final decision. So the chair might make 100 rulings, let's say, in a meeting, and then the assembly might agree with all of them along the way, except 5 or 6. So they pull those out and they say, no, I appeal from the decision of the chair. And so let's actually bring this one before the assembly, debate it, talk about it, get to the heart of it, and then vote on it so we make sure we get this question right. So this is the difference between appointing a chair to preside over the meeting and make rulings so that it takes some of the pressure off of the assembly versus electing or appointing a chair to just be a dictator and just set down the law however he or she sees fit. So parliamentary law does not allow that second version. The assembly maintains its charge over everything in that meeting. However, delegates to the chair to take that burden off the assembly unless 2 members, and we say 2 members because one appeals and then another seconds it, unless 2 members appeal from that decision. So if an appeal is made and seconded, the chair has to place it before the assembly and then the assembly decides. Now that's very important and it's very powerful, as you can clearly see, but it doesn't work at all if members are afraid to appeal. If they think, well, I don't want to be the one to appeal, or I'm not sure what's going to happen. I want to just eliminate, for the meeting coming up, eliminate that thought from your mind. The chair works for the assembly. You're a member of the assembly. If you believe the chair overlooked something in the ruling or got something wrong in the ruling, there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, I appeal from the decision of the chair. Robert's Rules of Order even specifically says that it's the same as disagreeing with someone in debate. You don't have to ask permission to disagree with it. You just simply disagree with it. And if you disagree with the chair, the appeal is a proper motion to make. So very important there that we don't sit on our hands. And now, another thing I want to say about the chair and about the parliamentarian together, basically, is I've served many meetings as parliamentarian, advising the chair. And I've served as the chair as well, as a third-party professional presiding officer brought in to serve to preside over the meeting. Now, no matter those roles there, the role of the chair that I was serving in, the role of the chair is always the same. The chair is there, remember, to facilitate the smooth and orderly transaction of business, to work for the assembly, to make sure the assembly is informed, to answer questions the assembly might have, but also when a point of order is made, to make a ruling immediately on that point, and then it's subject to an appeal. So it's never been the case, as a parliamentarian, I can't allow it. I never have allowed where the chair just acts as a dictator and says, no, this is what I say. We have to allow the members the opportunity to appeal. And then if they do, that's it. The chair drops it completely places the question before the assembly to decide. So the chair will then make it clear what the question is, what the parliamentary situation is, and how the chair ruled. Give all that information, and then debate begins on whether or not the chair's ruling should be sustained or overruled. So it's also very clear in an appeal, and all of this is in the literature as well. So don't worry about getting all this down. I'm really just talking about the attitude behind it. But it's important to know that members, before they go into a vote on anything, but it's very critical on an appeal as well, because it can be a little confusing. It's very important that members take the time to be very explicitly clear on the effect of their vote. Which way do I vote if I disagree with the chair? Which way do I vote if I want this to happen? So the chair should be very precise about that. And if you're not clear, your fellow delegates aren't going to be clear either. So do them all a favor and step up and ask the chair, Madam Chair, how exactly would I vote if I want this outcome? Or, whatever the case may be, make sure you're clear on which way you vote so that we actually get a fair and proper vote. And it's also important to have this underlying principle always alive inside of you when you're in a meeting, and that's that the votes decide. It's not the person with the loudest voice gets to say what we do. It's not the person who's most passionate that gets to say, which resolution is adopted or not. It's not even the side with the most who speak in debate. I've seen plenty of times where there are a lot of people speaking in debate on one side and not too many on the other, but the vote goes this way because those members, they didn't feel like they wanted to speak to it, or maybe they didn't feel like they needed to. It's always the votes that decide, not who's been there the longest or who has this official title. Nothing like that. It's always the votes. Keep that in your mind. Always the votes. So that's why it's important to go to a vote. Don't allow someone to just say it is this way or that way, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's always something you can do about it. Every ruling is always subject to an appeal. There's no such thing as there's just a certain question or a certain matter that the assembly can't decide. Somebody else just gets to decide it for them. That doesn't exist. But I do want to warn you about something that may come up, because sometimes it comes up in meetings. I've seen it come up before, and there's a citation from Robert's Rules of Order talking about an appeal that says that appeal is out of order when you have a situation where there cannot possibly be two reasonable opinions. Now, it's very important that we understand that language. Cannot possibly be two reasonable opinions. Not two opinions, but two reasonable opinions. And what Robert's Rules of Order is talking about here is when an appeal is not made in good faith, it's just made to slow down the proceedings. Just, I'm going to appeal because I want to appeal, and there's absolutely no reason to appeal. So that's not talking about a legitimate appeal. And any legitimate appeal is when you do not agree with the ruling that the chair made. You have every right to make an appeal, an immediate appeal. Robert's Rules of Order supports this by saying, and I quote, "If a member disagrees with a ruling of the chair affecting any substantial question, he should not hesitate to appeal." And it goes on to say, this is under the heading of appropriateness of appeals. And the whole idea of this paragraph, is to impart to you, the reader and the member and the delegate, that it is perfectly appropriate to appeal. You shouldn't be intimidated out of appealing, whether it's by the presiding officer or just by your fellow delegates around you. Oh, what do they think of me if I appeal? Well, they'll think you're exercising your right as a member, but no matter what anybody thinks, you have that right. And you don't want to end the meeting thinking, well, it's my fault. I should have appealed that because I didn't agree with the ruling. So just be unclear on that. Everything is subject to an appeal because the assembly elected the presiding officer or appointed the presiding officer solely to save the assembly some work and some time. But at any point, they can take that back from the presiding officer and decide it themselves. Now, another thing I want to talk about a little bit is debate. I'm not going to go into all of the rules and decorum of debate. You'll get a video or packet on that later. And I have drafted, like I said, I've drafted two rather large documents, one on procedures and another one on debate, specifically for the resolution that you'll be considering. Now, as a parliamentarian has to be, I am neutral. With every organization that I go to, I'm neutral. I represent the rules. And so when we do something like debate, I drafted a very detailed debate document. So how am I able to do that as a parliamentarian? Well, I'm simply structuring the debate in the most effective way so that I'm assisting the assembly members in exercising their rights to speak in debate. And that's exactly what I've done with this document. So when you look at this document, it is designed to effectively get the point across in the fewest words possible, but while being complete. You'll notice it starts out letting the assembly know which side which side of the resolution you're on, whether you support it or not. Very good idea whenever you speak in debate. So it covers a lot of points. And one thing I want to give is just as debate points. And I want to cover one more thing about the parliamentarian aspect. As parliamentarians, we don't and we should not. And actually, we are under the code of ethics that governs us as parliamentarians. We're not allowed to take a side. So if I'm in any particular resolution, let's just say a hypothetical resolution, and one side comes to me, and sometimes in organizations, I have members from one side coming to me and asking for advice. I give them advice. Members from the other side come and ask for advice. I give them advice. And my advice is never leaning one way or the other. It's always, clear, straightforward. It's by the book. It has to do with the rules. And this is how every parliamentarian is required to act and should act in a meeting. So if you have a parliamentarian in your meeting, that parliamentarian should be governed by the rules, not by a particular bent toward one philosophy or another, one opinion in debate or another. So when you have a parliamentarian or a presiding officer, they both have this duty of impartiality when they're in their function. And whether it's the permanent presiding officer who's been elected in that position, or sometimes, like I said, I come in as a third party presiding officer. In any case, that parliamentarian, that presiding officer, whether it's the president or whether it's an outside parliamentarian, has that duty to maintain the appearance of impartiality as far as possible and to help every member equally to exercise their rights, not to force upon them some narrative or anything like that, but to allow them to exercise their rights. So when we're talking about debates, so if one group comes to me and says, we are in favor of this, how should we structure our debate? So I can't say, well, I'm not in favor of this, so I'm not going to help you very well. No, the idea is I take all of the arguments, I put them together in a cohesive form. Here's the best way to get your point across. Here's all the things we want to cover. There's a lot of things taken out that we want to avoid because it's not good debate. It's just going to waste time. It's going to waste your time as a member. It's covering the same ground, maybe, whatever. So we go through that document. So we have a document of debate that shows you how debate should be structured for this particular position on this particular motion like this. And I can do exactly the same for the other side. And I'm not taking a side in either way because it's once again, why would I not take a side? Why would not this matter to me? Well, it matters very much to me, one single thing, and that's that the will of the assembly prevails. So if I draft something, one way for a group and they go in there and the assembly thinks a different way and the votes show that they're not in favor, they're not on the same side that this group is on, then as a parliamentarian, I understand that what is deserved in that assembly under parliamentary law is that the will of the assembly prevails. So whatever the will is, that's what I support as a parliamentarian, ensuring that will prevails at the end of the day. However, your best tool as a member of an assembly is your voice. So in debate, you can convince the other side. You can bring up your points. You can discuss points back and forth. But another important tip for debate that I do want to cover is because you have a lot of debate points in front of you, and I recommend to any group, this is my standard recommendation, is spread this out amongst everyone that's in favor of this particular stance, and make sure that everyone understands the arguments, but that they pick debate that they're more connected with, or that they think they would be good for them to deliver, so that they can really take it to heart. And everybody gets a different piece of the pie, instead of everybody saying, "Oh, I like item number 4 here out of 70, so we're all going to just do number 4." No, you want to make sure you spread it out. So that's one piece of advice. Another important piece of advice that I would give is don't chase the opposition debate wise into ground where they want to go. A lot of times they'll take their debate into a safe place or a winning position for them. And so don't meet them on that ground. Stick to your points that you've highlighted. They might have, what they feel are their strongest points, and you have what you feel are your strongest points. Those two strongest points should go against each other in the assembly in free and fair debate. And then the votes will decide who wins the day. But if you stack everything as a rebuttal to them, you're going after all of their points. That's what makes the debate feel shifted, and it can even make it feel like it's them against us, when it should really just be the issues. So that's why I would recommend sticking to the debate points, making sure you stand on your own firm ground with each point that you make. Don't make it a rebuttal to something else. So don't chase down, the other side's arguments, but make sure that your debate speaks for itself. Because remember, those delegates have ears and they have minds, and that's what you're speaking to. It's not a battle against someone who's fervently on the other side. Your battleground is really for those ears and minds of those individuals who are either on the fence or haven't decided yet, or have never heard about this issue and are hearing about it for the first time. And it's more effective if they see these cohesive debate points being rolled out, as opposed to a bitter fight between, two rivals. That's not going to give them the information that they need. So stick to your debate points, believe in them, and deliver them wholeheartedly, and that's your best chance of winning over those swing voters, you might say. So that's the bulk of what I want to cover in this recording. So what I want to leave you with is, you are the assembly. You have rights. No one is granting you this permission to speak a little bit because it's some great gift to you. That's your right as a member. The whole convention was assembled just for those members to be able to speak their voices and to have their votes counted. So keep that in mind. And so also keep in mind that the presiding officer, the purpose of the presiding officer is to assist you in every way possible. So if you have a question about procedure, if you're not clear on what the vote is, or if something is in order at this time, it's always okay. It's always in order to ask a procedural question of the presiding officer. Can I do this? And don't just take the answer. Make sure the answer makes sense, that there's a reason for the answer. And you can always ask, where does it say that in the rules? Just so that I can be sure. And if the presiding officer doesn't know where it is in the rules, that's a bad sign. Well, how do we know what it is? How can that be a proper ruling if you don't know where it is and where it's said in the rules? Perhaps, this is something that you want to do anyway in appeal. And that's a very important point. Just because the chair tells you that, something would be out of order, hypothetically, doesn't mean that you can't do that thing, because you have to have an actual ruling from the chair before you can appeal from it. So it's good to gain information from the chair, but realize just the chair saying in passing, no, a member can't make this motion, or this motion isn't amendable, doesn't make it so. A ruling will make it so, subject to an appeal, not just a statement by the chair, in passing, or an answer to a parliamentary inquiry. Also, don't just take anybody's word for it. Say, okay, where is this written down? And you'll notice in the rules that we have, not the rules, but the procedural guidelines that we have, the booklet that we made there, you'll see a lot of citations to rules, and you'll also see in there, the actual citation of Robert's Rules of Order, which is a great tool, because not only does it give you the language, but you can actually go to that section. And it's very effective in debates when you make a point. If you say, well, this is supported by Robert's Rules of Order because here's what Robert's Rules of Order says about it. Or even if you give the citation, appeal is in order. It's section 24, paragraph 1. Now, those those members, even if you don't go and everybody doesn't go and check it, they're like, wow, not only did that person make a motion or appeal from the decision of the chair, but they're actually highlighting where that right is granted in the rules specifically. So I know they know what they're talking about. So keep these things in mind. That information is always power, but also that perspective is power, very much so. So I see a lot of groups. I'm contacted by a lot of people after meetings that I wasn't involved with, and they contact me and they say, "Hey, this and this happened in the meeting. Is that right? Can they do that?" And my answer is no. That's absolutely, improper. And then they say, "Well, what can we do about it?" In almost all of the cases, the answer is, "Well, there's nothing you can do about it." Because the point of order has to be made timely in a timely fashion. So don't sit on your hands. Don't wait. If something doesn't look right to you, ask a question, make a point of order. Just make a point of order to get out there. And then if you don't agree with the ruling, appeal it, get in the habit of doing that. And then the assembly will the assembly will decide what the true answer is. Now, just one caveat to that is don't appeal everything that's wrong. Just the substantial things that are going to affect business. When I go to a meeting, I can see all kinds of, flaws in the procedure, but none of them are really worth mentioning. Maybe after the meeting, they could, work to improve those a little bit. But anytime, and I mean anytime we run across something that violates a member's rights, not just taking up items out of sequence or something like that, it's not necessarily, important, but something that violates a member's rights or something that violates the rules in a serious way, always raise those points of order and appeal if you don't agree with the decision of the chair. So with that, I wish you a very happy, confident, healthy meeting, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much.